Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar about muscle loss in older people. My name is Nuno, and I'm the Director of Research and Innovation at Nightingale Hammerson. Today, as part of our REACH initiative to support people to live better for longer at home, we are hosting a group of 3 experts that have been working with Nightingale Hammerson for quite a long time. REACH by Nightingale Hammerson is the new charitable initiative from Nightingale Hammerson that is a charity with over 100 years of experience in looking after the older Jewish community in residential care in both our homes. And we are now extending our remit to support people to live better for longer at home. And for that, we have created over 100 different types of resources that are available in our website and YouTube channel, but are also hosting webinars like today's webinar that are aiming to provide information to informal carers, but also to professionals that work in the care sector. Now, this webinar is going to be recorded and will be available in the next week or so in the Nightingale Hammerson's YouTube channel, so you will be able to watch it as many times as you wish. You will have time to ask questions at the end of the presentation from our fantastic speakers. You can also write your questions on the chat, and at the end we'll give you the opportunity to either ask them or to get a reply from our speakers. I'm also inviting you to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube channels so you can get all the updates from the fantastic initiatives we have been hosting and creating. If you need captions, both in English or any other language, if you go into the more settings on Teams, you can follow the instructions and get the captions from today's webinar. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Dr. Adrian Slee, Rahaf Ali, and Sophie Fitzpatrick. Welcome to our webinar, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Nuno. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to meet you all, though we can't see you. It's really nice to be here. I'll give you a little bit of background. So I am an Associate Professor in Nutrition at UCL in Division of Medicine. My name is Dr. Adrian Slee. I have an undergraduate degree in Physiology and Biochemistry Nutrition, PhD in Nutritional Sciences, and I've had an interest in specifically areas around malnutrition, sarcopenia, which is muscle wasting, and things like frailty for about 10 to 15 years now. And I've had some research looking at care home populations in particular and hospital patients, and looking at trying to optimize nutritional assessment for these populations because it's very important. It affects clinical outcomes. And so we're really lucky to have a fantastic collaboration with Nightingale Hammerson, and we've had students each year doing projects at the care home and taking some, meet some of the residents, taking some measurements and doing some interventions, and it's really super stuff. And then we have 2 of our wonderful students today. We have Rahaf Ali and Sophie Fitzpatrick, who are MSc nutrition students, just recently finished, and they're going to tell you today about some of the wonderful things they've done in the care home, and also give an overview of muscle loss in older adults. And so I will pass you over to them now. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Rahaf Ali. I'm a dietitian from Saudi Arabia and an MSc student of obesity and clinical nutrition at UCL. I was working with Dr. Slee and Sophie at this research project about muscle loss in older adults and also other syndromes related to geriatrics. So, Sophie.
Hi everyone, my name is Sophie and I completed a Bachelor of Psychology and a Bachelor of Human Nutrition in Canada. And then recently I completed a Master's in Clinical and Public Health Nutrition at UCL. And then this past summer, I completed research with Rahaf at Nightingale and Hammerson, and we looked at sarcopenia, malnutrition, and frailty. And now I'm working as a dietitian back home in Canada in a hospital.
Today we'll be talking about muscle loss in older adults. So we will be covering muscle loss and assessment tools, impact of muscle loss, our findings, and prevention strategies. So what is muscle loss? Muscle loss, also known as sarcopenia, is a chronic degenerative disease defined by progressive loss of skeletal muscle mass and function, primarily affecting older adults. After the age of 30, nearly 3 to 8% of muscle mass is lost each decade, with a rate of decline increasing after the age of 60. So in 2026, sarcopenia was officially recognized as a disease and assigned an international classification of disease code. Yet sarcopenia is still an overlooked condition, and no prescribed drug has been proved its effectiveness in treating sarcopenia. So aging reduces motor neuron activity and promote many metabolic changes, including oxidative stress, hormone shift, inflammation, physical inactivity, and poor nutrition. As we can see here, we have an MRI scan of a leg muscle for the young and older adult. The difference here is that muscle mass is lower, as you can see the light gray, and for the older adult, as the muscle mass decreases, also subcutaneous fat increase in the dark gray, which affects their mobility, increases the risk of disability as well. So why is this important? Muscle loss is associated with increased risk of adverse health outcomes. These include reduced physical function, bone fracture, fall, and increased mortality. So sarcopenia is common among care homes, with a recent meta-analysis found a prevalence ranging from 25% to 73.7%. This variation and this wide range is partially explained by the different assessment and diagnostic tools used to detect sarcopenia. So here we have the assessment tools for sarcopenia. We followed the European Working Group on Sarcopenia for Older People algorithm, which consists of 4 domains. First, case finding using the SARC-F questionnaire that we're going to be talking about, assessment of muscle strength, and if sarcopenia is probable, a confirmation of muscle quantity and quality should be carried out using DEXA scan, BIA scan, BIA CT scan, and MRI scan. If sarcopenia is confirmed, then the severity is determined by the physical performance test. These include gait speed test, time up and go test, and 400-meter walk test. So for the SARC-F questionnaire, it's a questionnaire, a validated tool to detect for the risk of sarcopenia in older adults. It consists of 5 questions that ask about strength, walking, difficulty walking, and rising from chair, climbing stairs, and how many times they fall in the past. If the score is 4 or more, then sarcopenia is probable, and further assessment of muscle strength and quantity or quality should be carried out. So muscle strength is a key indicator of sarcopenia, as muscle loss decline with aging, subcutaneous fat increase. Muscle strength gradually decreases with aging, with nearly half of the older adult having experienced low physical performance, which also increased the risk of disability. Therefore, we should aim for minimizing the loss of muscle loss in older adults through intervention tools that we're going to be covering today as well, including nutrition and exercise. So these are the physical tests. First, the muscle strength that we covered. We use the hand grip strength to test for muscle strength. Also, muscle quantity and quality should be measured using the MRI scan, CT scan, bioelectrical impedance analysis, which is the device we used, the DEXA scan, and for the physical performance 400-meter walk test, time up and go, and gait speed test. So let's talk about our study. It's entitled Investigating Sarcopenia, Malnutrition, and Frailty in Care Homes. It's an observational study carried out at Nightingale and Hammerson Care Home during the summer period of 2025. We recruited 26 participants after excluding residents diagnosed with dementia, cognitive impairment, and those who were in a palliative care. So participants with cardiac pacemaker were excluded from participating in the BIA, as the electrical current generated by the device might interfere with the function of the pacemaker. So all assessments were carried out in a single session, and a written consent obtained prior to participation. So we looked at another two geriatric syndromes, which is malnutrition and frailty. So let's start with malnutrition. It's the absence of nutrition intake or its absorption, which lead to body composition alteration, including decreased fat mass and fat-free mass, sorry, and body cellular mass. And also Sophie will cover a novel tool to test for the body cellular mass. So we used the Malnutrition Universal Screening Tool, which is the widely used tool to detect for malnutrition, and it's the most practical. We also had the chance to use more sensitive tools, such as the Mini Nutrition Assessment and the Global Leadership Initiative on Malnutrition. For frailty, so frailty is the reduced physiological reserves across multiple organ systems, which increase the vulnerability to stressors such as fall and disability. We used the Frail scale to detect for frailty. So prevalence of sarcopenia depending on multiple tools. First, using the SARC-F, we had 80.8% of participants who scored 4 or more for the risk of sarcopenia. And we also had 96.2% of participants who scored low for hand grip strength. We also had 73% of participants who scored low for calf circumference, which is also a tool used to detect for the risk of sarcopenia. We also did an independent analysis of sarcopenic obesity prevalence. We had a high percentages of residents who have sarcopenia and also obesity, but much lower percent of participants who were diagnosed with sarcopenic obesity, with only 37.5% of participants who were diagnosed with sarcopenic obesity, which highlight also the current challenges in identifying sarcopenic obesity. So malnutrition prevalence. We had the highest prevalence of malnutrition using the MNA and Glenn criteria. We had 11.5% of participants who were diagnosed as having malnutrition using MNA, and 61.5% of participants who were at risk of malnutrition. For GLIM, we had 15.4% of participants who have severe malnutrition and 30.8% of participants who had malnutrition. For the MUST, we had 3.8% of participants who were at high risk of malnutrition and 19.2% of participants who were at medium risk of malnutrition. So these three geriatric syndromes tend to coexist. We had 65% of participants who were diagnosed with the three conditions, highlighting the importance of the multimodal screening and assessment approach for these three geriatric syndromes. Thank you so much. I'll hand it here to Sophie.
All right. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to continue talking about our research. So another thing that we looked at is cell membrane capacitance, which I'll go into a bit more detail about. So overall, from past research, we know that poor cellular health has been linked to conditions such as malnutrition, sarcopenia, frailty, and also mortality. So cell membrane capacitance, also known as CM for short, it's an emerging marker of cellular health. So CM is measured through bioelectrical impedance analysis, as we talked about a bit before. So essentially, this device is going to send a small electrical current through the body, and it's going to measure the cell's resistance to this current. So overall, CM reflects the cell's ability to store electrical charges, and therefore higher CM values indicate better structural integrity overall of the cells, and lower CM values indicates the opposite, so worse cellular integrity. All right, so here's a table we created of some of our findings. So we wanted to highlight the last row of the table there. So we tried to compare nutrition status, so malnutrition versus non-malnourished, to cell membrane capacitance. And it was really interesting. We found a significant association between nutrition status and cell membrane capacitance. So individuals who were considered to be malnourished had significantly lower CM values, so significantly lower cellular health, which was very interesting to see. And then we did the same thing with sarcopenia. So we compared sarcopenia parameters to cell membrane capacitance. And again, if you look at the two graphs on the right-hand side there was a significant correlation between lower CM values and both low muscle in the arms and legs and low non-fat parts of the body. So muscle, bone, water, and organs. So overall, these findings really indicate that cell membrane capacitance could be a potential biomarker for malnutrition and sarcopenia in the older populations and could be used in future research as well as in clinical practice eventually. Okay, so I'm going to move on to talking a bit about some prevention strategies. So we're going to first focus on exercise. So we're going to talk about strength exercise and aerobic exercise, and then we're also going to focus on nutrition. So we'll be covering high energy, high protein diets, social facilitation, food fortification, and then also oral nutrition supplements. All right, so starting off with exercise. So we know that daily physical exercise is important for everybody, but it is especially important as we age. So those over the age of 65, there is certain recommendations for this age group. So overall, it's recommended that they participate in strength training approximately twice per week. And so what we mean by strength training is exercises that use resistance bands or dumbbells or even body weight bearing exercises. It's also suggested that they participate in moderate intensity activity for approximately 150 minutes per week. And then finally, just to be active overall and reduce the amount of time sitting or sedentary activity as much as they can. So aside from the benefits of exercise in terms of muscle health, there's other benefits as well we wanted to highlight. So first of all, it lowers the likelihood of developing cardiovascular conditions. Regular exercise is also protective against metabolic diseases in older adults. And then finally, those who participate in exercise are shown to have better cognition, even with light intensity exercise. All right, so now moving on to the nutrition aspect of things. So first of all, protein. So we know that protein, again, is important for everybody. But as we age, protein needs go up a little bit. So it's recommended that older adults consume approximately 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And this is going to go up a little bit more, again, for older adults who have acute or chronic illnesses. They're going to need approximately 1.2 to 1.5 grams of protein per day per kilogram of body weight. So this corresponds very roughly to approximately 30 grams of protein per meal, but this is going to look different for everybody depending on their needs and if they have an acute or chronic illness. Okay, so we wanted to highlight here what 30 grams of protein actually looks like, so it can be a bit hard to quantify. So here we have lots of different examples of what this could look like throughout your diet. So for example, one small chicken breast would be 30 grams of protein, or if you had 1.5 cups of Greek yogurt. Then there's also lots of plant-based options as well. So if you had 2.5 cups of chickpeas, this would be, again, 30 grams of protein. And then if we look at how this could be spread out throughout the day, we have some examples here. So for an individual who requires that 30 grams of protein per meal, so approximately 90 grams per day, of course, this is going to be different, but this is just for the example. So 90 grams of protein per day, it could be spread out between breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we could have 1.5 cups of Greek yogurt for breakfast, if you were to have like a small chicken breast for lunch, and then 1/2 cup of ground beef for supper. That would equate to 30 grams of protein per meal, and then 90 grams total. Of course, you'd eat other foods with these items, but we're here just highlighting the main protein aspects of the meal. And then some people, especially older adults who might be more inclined to eat more frequent, smaller meals throughout the day, they could also separate their protein into more snack options as well. So if you were to have a 1/2 portion of protein for breakfast, a snack, another 1/2 portion for lunch, another protein-rich snack, and then protein for supper as well, this could be another great way to meet that approximately 90 grams of protein per day. All right, and here we just wanted to highlight a study that we came across that was quite interesting and really highlighted the point that a bit of a higher dose of protein is really important for those with acute or chronic illness. So this study here, it's called The Effect of Dietary Protein on Physical Performance in Middle-Aged and Older Adults with Type 2 Diabetes. And it was a 12-week randomized control pilot study. So in this study, there was 26 participants who had type 2 diabetes, and they suffered from low muscle mass or strength, or low physical performance. And overall, the control group was given an adequate but bit lower dose than the other group and then the intervention group. So they were given 0.8 to 1 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, whereas the intervention group was given a bit of a higher dose at 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilograms of body weight. And overall, we saw in the study that the intervention group had significant improvements in hand grip strength and physical performance. So this was really interesting to see just how much of an impact this higher dose of protein makes on muscle loss in this demographic. Okay, so moving on to another topic that we wanted to discuss today, which is social facilitation. So from past research, we know that older adults are more likely to have better food intake when they're eating with other people versus when they're cooking or eating alone by themselves. So dining with friends and family can create a relaxed environment. And overall, when we're socializing, engaging with others, often mealtimes become more prolonged. And with prolonged mealtimes, we also see an increase in the level of food intake overall. But some people also might prefer small, frequent meals throughout the day. So incorporating socialization into even snacks or tea times with friends and family can be another great way to increase intake. Other things to consider in the older demographic is things like room lighting, temperature, and music, and the environment that they're eating in. This can have a really big impact on food intake as well. All right, so next we wanted to talk about food fortification. So food fortification is based on a food-first approach. And so essentially what this involves is adding extra nutrients to the foods that we typically eat. And it's usually for the goal of making them more calorie and protein rich, and overall to just boost nutritional content and just increase the value of the food that you're eating. So there's lots of different ways that this can be done. It really depends on the individual and their preferences and the diet that they're on. But some common examples would be adding butter to mashed potatoes, or adding like skim milk powder to oatmeal could be a great option as well. But again, there's lots of different ways to do this. It is important to note that some older adults might be on texture modified diets. So just making sure that the method of food fortification is in line with their diet that supports their needs is important as well. And we also wanted to discuss oral nutrition supplements, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. So oral nutrition supplements can be a great option for some individuals. Oral nutrition supplements, they are essentially a beverage that are high in calories, and they're also high in protein. So typically calories might range from approximately 100 to 300 calories per bottle of oral nutrition supplement. And then for protein, it's anywhere from like 20 to 30 grams typically. And oral nutrition supplements, they're typically indicated if we've tried other options first. So for example, if we've already tried some nutrition counseling, food fortification, other methods like that, and nothing seems to be working, or the individual is more inclined to be taking an oral nutrition supplement, then we might head to that route. But yeah, they can be a really great option as well to increase calorie and protein intake. Okay, so now to kind of wrap up our presentation, we wanted to leave you with a few key takeaways. So first of all, the fact that sarcopenia is a condition associated with aging, and it should be routinely assessed and screened for. And from our research, and from past research as well, we know that sarcopenia, malnutrition, and frailty do often coexist. And it is really important to have a multimodal screening and assessment approach for detecting these geriatric syndromes, and also providing optimal interventions that are suited to the individual and their specific needs. From this presentation, we also learned that exercise and a high protein diet are very essential elements of reducing muscle loss in older adults. But there's also different methods as well, such as social meals, food fortification, and oral nutrition supplements that can all have really great impacts in preserving muscle health and show really promising results. So they should also be considered in future interventions. So thank you so much for listening to our presentation today. That is it from us. And yeah, I think we can maybe move on to some questions now.
Thank you, Rahaf. Thank you, Sophie, for the very interesting presentation. And we always learn so much from researchers, and you are a great example of that. So we are now into the part of question and answer. And first of all, I would like to invite all of you to check information about the Care Home Research Forum that we are organizing on the 6th of November at Hammerson House, where we're gonna invite researchers to share the outcomes of their research, like our speakers did today. And in the audience, we're gonna have quite a varied group of people that will be able to ask questions and interact with the researchers. This is going to be a hybrid event, both in person and online as well. So you are all invited, and you're gonna have the link in the chat to follow. Now is the time for questions. If there is any question, please raise your hand or write the question in the chat. But before we have the first question from the chat, I'm going to ask the first question because I found it very interesting. So we always talk about prevention. So how can we prevent the muscle loss in older people? Is that preventable or not? And what can we do to prevent it?
Shall I go first? Right. So, first of all, Rahaf, Sophie, excellent work. Thank you very much. So there is actually really good evidence now that certain things like physical activity and exercise do actually make a difference and can help to prevent muscle loss. So muscle loss is inevitable with aging, right? It's just part of the normal physiological aging process. And there's certain things that affect that trajectory of loss. So things like disease, physical inactivity, poor diet, for example, certain medications and drugs. But we know for sure that doing exercise on a regular basis or general physical activity can help reduce sarcopenia risk, and even some evidence of reducing frailty risk, right? Because these things are intimately together, so sarcopenia and physical frailty. The way we look at this from a research perspective is we look at gold standard evidence, which we look at randomized controlled trials, and then you can do something called a systematic review and meta-analysis of these studies. So you take all the best randomized controlled trials and you look at the sum of the effects of all these different studies that have been performed. So the evidence is good. I actually, if anyone's interested in the meeting and you're from an academic background, I'll put some current systematic reviews in the chat for you. But we know that works for sure. And then the other big thing at the moment is multimodal interventions. So we know that they potentially exercise can work better with the combination of things like nutrition. Okay, things we talked about today, things like protein intake in particular, and maybe things like vitamin D supplementation, for example, when necessary. And then things like psychosocial interventions, because it's critical to be able to actually do the exercise in the first place, to enjoy exercise, to be motivated and adhere to a program, right? It's got to become part of your life, right? Something you enjoy. And so that is another whole aspect to that, to actually, and the same with nutrition, as Sophie mentioned at the end, there's no point giving an intervention if it's not, interesting, fun, or palatable, or whatever. So there's a lot of good evidence behind all this. So multimodal interventions, nutrition, exercise, social behavioural interventions. The thing with drugs at the moment, there are a lot of drugs that have been that are very promising, and there have been many clinical trials, anti-sarcopenic drugs, but they haven't been licensed yet for routine practice.
Yeah.
And I will put those in the chat whilst we go to the next question. All right?
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Let me also take the opportunity to introduce Karen Strucker, that you've seen that she appeared on the screen. She's our fantastic dietitian and working at Nightingale Hammerson, and she hosted our students, Sophie and Rahaf, when they were doing the placement with us, and has been working with Dr. Adrian Slee. So we've got a second question that is from a fantastic advanced nurse practitioner called Uta Hamil, that has been working in care homes for many years. And she's asking, would you use the MUST score in a person with a BMI of over 40 who has lost some weight not due to illness? Lovely question. one?
Do you want to go first, Karen? From a practical perspective, you know.
Yes. Go on, Karen.
Thanks very much, Uta, for your question. I think with any nutrition screening tool, your interpretation of that screening tool is really important. Something like the MUST tool, for instance, within the care home setting is looking at two things. It's looking at the body mass index and it's looking at percentage weight loss. Body mass index is something that's quite deceiving. It can be quite deceiving. I've always used examples in the past of, I don't know how many people were around when Jonah Lomu played for the New Zealand rugby team, who had, I think, a BMI, I can't remember what it was exactly, something like 31, which put him in the overweight or obese category, but he had something like 7% body fat. So BMI doesn't distinguish between muscle and fat, which is why, like Sophie and Rahaf were saying, it's really important to do further nutrition screening to look at things over and above BMI. So personally, I would be looking at why the person has lost weight. Any unintentional weight loss is of concern, irrespective of how big or small a person is. I think there's often a tendency to not worry about someone when they lose weight because they're in the overweight or obese category. But as I say, any unintentional weight loss is concerning because often that results in loss of muscle mass. It's not just fat mass that is lost. So what I would say is it's an individual approach. It's looking into the reasons why that person has lost weight and making a decision from there. But yeah, MUST is just one aspect of your screening.
Perfect. Thank you. Adrian?
Yeah, no,
very briefly.
Just to lead on very briefly. So that has actually been, that's where I started this whole story, is going back 15 years ago. MUST is used as routine standard care for assessment, right? It is very inaccurate for an older population, and that is exactly what we've been researching for that period of time. And so one of the devices that Sophie and Rahaf are using this summer, so bioelectrical impedance assessment, is where you do an actual, you've got a portable device. So it's not a DEXA scan that you have to go to hospital and have a test. You can take this device by the bedside, do a screening assessment of someone's body composition, and to estimate, for example, of if someone has a BMI of over 30 or whatever, how much is muscle mass, water as well, we forget obviously, because if someone has severe edema, okay, you can assess for that, and how much is fat mass, and give you a better picture of what's actually happening to that person. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to the next question that is from Nicola Alacock, and Nicola is saying, thank you, that was very interesting. We were wondering the reason why people with dementia were excluded from this study. Very good question. Adrian?
Yeah, so it's a very simple one, is that at UCL, because this study went through UCL research ethics, we can't actually have anyone on the study who has dementia, unfortunately. So if we went through NHS research ethics, we could go through that process. But if a resident cannot give consent and does not have mental capacity, unfortunately, with the confines of UCL research ethics, we're not allowed to do that. But maybe in future studies, that's what we have planned, is potentially going through the NHS research ethics route.
Thank you, Adrian. And that was something we challenged Adrian straight away when just before we started the study, was not to include people with dementia, because we really understand the importance of including people living with dementia in research. Jim Clark is asking two questions. I'm going to read both of them. How do we get all of this information across to the care home sector and to the care in the home care sector? And how can we manage the funding challenges? I might answer myself this one, if you don't mind. So one of the ways in which we can get this information across is the way we are doing, through webinars, through sharing, in our YouTube channel, social media, organizing events like Care Home Research Forum. But at the same time, I'd say it's very important for us to open our services to research, right? Because the researchers are our critical friends. They see what we do with they see what we do, how we do it, and they ask, why are you doing this way? So they are challenging our practice in a positive way. So I think it's a multifactorial process in order to get more care homes and domiciliary care services open to this sort of research. At the same time, from a funding point of view, we really need to provide evidence to governments about the impact of the services we run in our care homes or domiciliary care services, and the impact it has in the quality of life of people, but also financially to the Department of Health and Social Care and NHS and so on. So it's about giving evidence to the policymakers so that they can make the right decisions around funding and service delivery. Yeah, so thank you, Jim. It's a very good point. We've got Uta again that asked about, has your study shown reduced falls in the elderly?
Yeah, we can answer that question. So we did not look at falls, like the impact of falls, but this actually was part of the SARCF screening tool. It asks like how many falls the resident has had in the past little while, but we didn't look at that as one of our outcomes, but it would be something interesting to look at in the future. And it is a study that students carry out probably this year again, I think, Dr. Slee. So
absolutely, yeah, we can look at the outcomes over the coming year for sure, definitely. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I invite all of you to read Jim's comments about Healthy for Longer. That is a very good initiative that is promoting healthier lives for the older community. So have a look at Jim's comment on the chat. Then we also have comment from Deepa that is about, thanks for the interesting presentation. When evidence proves there is a requirement of an MDT approach for managing muscle loss, why is it a struggle to get funding to have the appropriate team in rehab wards? Example, we do not have funded dietetics or speech and language therapy in our rehab wards. I'd say that is the same as we are experiencing in care homes and domiciliary care. And I'll just replicate the answer I gave before. Is about give evidence. Let's get people like our speakers today to provide the evidence and demonstrate that it is important to look into this. This is something that can, doing the proper interventions, can improve the quality of life of the people, of the older people, can prevent hospital admissions, and can provide savings to the National Health Service as well, because everything is about money nowadays. We need really to provide financial evidence that what we are doing provides a positive impact. We've got just 3 more minutes. We've got now Michelle Philpott that is asking, ONS with the added ingredients of HMB and vitamin D are becoming increasingly popular and recommended at numerous conferences for frailty falls. What are your views on these products for supporting frailty? Adrian.
Should I quickly talk about this? Because I know the product in particular, right? So Abbott Nutrition do an HMB vitamin D product. I think the first thing, so is understand what is HMB. It's a leucine metabolite. So the leucine amino acid has an anabolic effect. So there is quite good evidence that this product helps, but going back to the original point, is the most important thing is a way of life, right? So structured daily physical activity, exercise, high quality diet comes first, and then the other bit, if someone has those additional requirements, is potentially it could be some type of supplement to support, trying those improvements in outcomes. But the most important thing is exercise and overall diet first. Can't emphasize that enough. And just getting, for example, with diet, getting overall protein intake. Okay, there's good evidence on omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D from dietary sources first of all, whole foods, antioxidants. That's the core thing, rather than total reliance on ONS. ONS can help if someone is obviously malnourished and sarcopenic. As part of the multimodal approach, sure, that can help, but that's obviously one supplement of many. So we're not here to promote supplements, but the most important thing is, for sure, that multimodal approach, right?
Perfect. Thank you very much, Adrian.
Cheers.
And thank you to all the speakers, Rahaf, Sophie, Adrian. Thank you, Karen, for being there in the background as well. That Karen has been very discreet on this webinar, but what she does is fantastic.
Absolutely.
There's nothing discreet in what she does. It's fantastic in the way she improves the quality of life of people living in our care homes. So I thank you all for attending this webinar. I'll also invite you to fill in the survey, the feedback form that is going to be sent to you, to all the attendees. We really value your feedback. We always think we can do better. So please be honest with us. And also at the same time, invite you again to follow our social media channels. If you look for Reach by Nightingale Hammerson on LinkedIn or Facebook, and if you go to the YouTube and look for Nightingale Hammerson, you will find us and will find all the content that we create, but also you will have access to this webinar once it's released in the next week or so. So thank you again and wish you all a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.